Michelle Graves, your host on The Power of Money, and I'm honored to have you as a part of my world in this coming segment. With The Power of Money, as you know, we are interested in three things. First, that you get the necessary education so that you and your family will have the information to do well in these difficult times. The second thing I'm interested in is for you to be empowered to prosper. I want only the best for you, but you can't get that if you don't have the education and then the drive to make it happen. And the final thing, and perhaps the most important thing, is that you be energized. Because life is more than a journey. Life is about living. And so I want you to learn these things and to be empowered and encouraged and energized. I'm Michelle Graves. Now here we go.
And welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm your host, Michelle Graves, affectionately known for over 30 years as the Money Lady. And as always, I am committed to bringing you the best of the best in whatever genre we're going to address. And so, again, the format has expanded over the years. Been doing this a long time, as many of you viewers know. And I brought in some incredible people, but I must say that who I have on set today is absolutely one of the top of the line women in the United States in the area of education and learning in our schools. And I say this without any kind of hesitation. Dr. Virginia Rhodes, who is based in Cincinnati, Ohio, has an expansive history being a school board member, being principal of a very advanced learning school, Hughes High School in Cincinnati, where she had some very unique and powerful learning approaches. So I want to explore, particularly given what's happened in Florida, with the shootings of the kids, same thing in Kentucky and all of the United States. I want to go in deep with Dr. Rhodes because education is in the balance right now. How our kids are going to be educated, where they're going to be educated, who's going to be giving them the message. So without further ado, I'm going to shift the focus from me, because I'm not being interviewed, to her. And how are you today?
Good to see you, Michelle.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm just honored that you're in my studio in honor of Women's Month. The strategy is great for you being here, but let's begin with, how did you wind up in education?
Well, first you have to get educated before you can wind up in education. And I guess I give credit to my mom and dad, because they sat around reading the Reader's Digest when I was little, and learning to read at an early age is a predictor of success later on in school.
I did not know that.
Yes, many parents teach their kids to read before they go to school.
They sure do.
And they have the jump on everybody else. So,
and is that a lifetime thing?
Absolutely a lifetime thing. The
Mm.
high vocabulary, if you learn to read early, you have more vocabulary than the other students. It is a leg up that any parent can give their kid. If you can read, you can teach your child to read.
Oh my goodness,
before they go to
school.
Yeah.
That is good information. So your parents literally laid the foundation for your learning skills as well as your perspective on learning.
Yes, and I was in a family, I was raised in South Carolina in the red clay.
Oh my
and
goodness,
my
but I
family
love red
had
clay.
almost nothing else but that Reader's Digest.
Okay.
So you don't have to be in the middle class or wealthy to do what has to be done with a child, which is to talk to them, read to them, build that vocabulary. There's a huge difference in the number of words that students know, even by the second grade, among kids who at least had a start on reading when they came in.
That is extremely good information.
Yes.
Because my grandson at 4 is a reader.
Yes.
But we started talking to him and showing him and teaching him at 2, and he basically got it. At little people, what else are they going to do?
Sure. But when you have parents who are very young, sometimes they just don't know that. They are thinking in the back of their mind, I'll start reading to my child. I've had students tell me this who were pregnant or parenting, and I would ask them, what age do you think you should start reading to your baby?
Yeah.
And or when the baby was new, I'd say, you're a great mom already. What age are you going to start reading to your child?
Yes.
And they would say, well, I think before he or she goes to school, you know, maybe 5 or 6, maybe 4 or 5. I'm like, no, way too late. Read to them as soon as they can hear you for a minute, because reading to a child at a very young age, like you're saying, at 2, at 1,
Yes.
this is what also sets up a condition that helps you to survive and thrive in school, which is it sets up your attention span.
Elaborate on that.
Children that have not been read to by the time they go to school have very short attention spans. Because if you think about it, mom or dad is reading, or auntie, grandma,
Yes.
big sister, brother, whatever, they're reading to you. You're sitting for a few minutes with them while they're doing
Right, that is
and you're
correct.
mostly quiet. You might be pointing or saying da, da, ba, ba, even before you can talk. You can be read to.
Right.
But it teaches a child that to sit and read or look at something, pictures, hear words, that this is something that you sit for a few minutes and you're not doing everything else in the world. You're having a story.
So that's concentrated attention span.
Yes. And of course, as children become able to read longer stories to themselves, and their parents are reading maybe a chapter book when they get old enough, and they begin reading in first grade, kindergarten, first grade, and chapter books maybe in 3rd grade.
Okay.
Then they are increasing their own attention span to be able to comfortably pay attention in class.
Now, explain to me, or elaborate if you can, has the iPad phenomena impacted on children in terms of their attention span?
I think it has, and so it's more important than ever, I think, for parents to be very, what do we call it these days? Very mindful of how we raise young babies and young children, and even as they get into teenage, that what happens with that child during the day should be something that you are making happen as a parent, because you have a sense of we're gonna have some good nutritious food a few times a day. We're going to have a story once or twice a day, at least once or twice a day. But many kids just grow up just reading. They have a stack of books, they read all the time. And that's just one of the healthiest things kids can get into.
I just think
you can't get in a lot of trouble reading children's books.
I can't imagine that you would.
Right.
But I do know, I can't help but note how astute little people are
Oh, yes.
on these iPads and cell phones
Yes.
and all the above. And
I think
I'm
if you
just
have
wondering.
the appropriate materials for
Okay.
them, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
What's wrong with it is the same thing that's wrong with TV. If you use it as a babysitter, that's not
Right.
really that good.
Okay,
They're going to
versus
see stuff they
engagement.
shouldn't, or they're just going to start staring and not really understanding what they're seeing. Same thing on the iPad or playing on a cell phone. I have a grandson who likes to, as he calls it, play on the cell phone. And cell phones are actually super instructional materials to use in junior high and high school. If you have a teacher who is bringing up lessons on that cell phone, they can actually, you can have many math and science lessons can be performed on a smartphone.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. And so at Hughes, one of the things we did when we started the STEM program, and James Stallworth, wonderful math teacher, started this. He put the international no symbol up over a cell phone to indicate that, okay, I'm giving instructions right now, so no cell phones are allowed.
Okay.
And then he would flip it around. He'd say, we're about to do a lesson. It's going to involve your phone computer.
Okay.
Because this is what it's called when you use it instructionally. He flipped it around, and everybody was to get out their cell phones. And of course, this was a couple of years back.
Okay.
So in a group of 4, he would have students working groups. In a group of 4, maybe 1 or 2 students would have a smartphone.
Okay.
The other, one kid would have no phone. The other kid would have a flip phone.
Okay.
And so the kids would go, it's sort of like, you know, rock, paper, scissors. It would be, okay, whoever's got the smartphones, the others get put away, and we lay these out and we share them as instructional tools.
Oh my goodness.
And then when time's up, we put it back.
Right.
So social use is not
allowed
at Hughes.
Right.
But instructional use is absolutely encouraged for the staff and the kids.
That is very, 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 in my opinion, forward thinking.
Yes. And
because
you
I'm
want
not
to pick a
against-
school that is doing something like that.
But how would a parent know?
You have to visit these schools. You have to talk to people who have been there.
Okay.
And here's another, it's not a secret, but it's not known by a lot of people. one of the smart things to do is to realize that parents who get their kids in the school that they want them in, that may be the neighborhood school, if it's a good one, and it may be a magnet school. If you have some sort of theme that you like or your child is engaged in, then they can go to a magnet school. Or they can go to any high school they want in Cincinnati Public. Now, this, I'm not sure how this is handled in Dayton, but in Cincinnati, the kids run the show as far as what high school they attend. They can attend any high school. So the parent has to, especially the parent of a first child, because you don't know the school territory yet. So you have to scout out these schools, and guess what? A lot of people start thinking, well, I'm going to do that early this year. I'm going to do that in January, February, and be all lined up. That is not early in the school world.
That is not early.
Parents who are sending their children to schools that are hard to get into, meaning it may be a public school like the zoo school at Hughes.
Yes.
It is a regular public school. There's no special criteria, but there are a lot of people that want in that school. And guess when people start lining up their ducks? In about October, November.
Of the previous year.
Yes, of the previous year. Private schools, public schools, magnet schools, and just plain good old neighborhood schools. All start building their list for the following year's enrollment.
The previous year.
The previous year, no later than November.
No later
And that is
than
why
November.
Parents may sometimes be caught off guard approaching a school to enroll, even in January, could be March or June, and thinking I'm plenty early, and
not so. Not so.
People need to know that.
That's good information. I know that this show airs in many other markets, and I would just say to my viewers, if you're listening to this information, check with your school boards, all your local school boards, to find out what is the proper procedure. And again, as Dr. Rhodes said, get to it. Just get to it. It's your child. Nobody's going to do it for you. So now this is the public school scenario that you're sharing. And we're looking at, and I don't have, the verdict is still out because I don't have a sense. My kids are all way grown. They are dealing with their own issues. I have 2 grandchildren that are both very young, 4 and 2. So I don't really have a perspective on this whole thing. But talk to me about charter schools.
Okay.
I have to ask because I'm not clear. They're all over the place in odd places. And the other thing I want to talk to you as an educational alternative to give a rounded perspective is at-home schooling.
Homeschooling.
Homeschooling,
Sure.
Which a lot of people are doing as well.
Sure.
So let's talk about charter schools. What are charter schools?
Well, Michelle, there's surely more ways to go to school now than there ever have been.
I'm like, you just went to school, you know.
Yeah, you just went, there was one school and that's where you went.
You walked to school.
Exactly, so now it's a whole choice. You got to do your research.
Okay.
Charter schools were originally sold to the public, and I mean, later on I find out they were really sold. But the idea was sold in the name of experimentation. That maybe the public schools have not yet figured out all the different ways that learning could take place. And some of us, myself included, were a little wary of this. We were quite wary, in fact. We felt that, okay, you're going to take public money, you're going to take my mom's taxes, and you're going to now, instead of having those fund the public schools, you're going to have them fund also another whole set of schools that have virtually no regulation. And although that regulation has evolved around the country, Ohio is known, this is no kidding, Ohio is known for some of the worst charter legislation in the country because they're unregulated. How
do you not regulate a school when you're using tax dollars?
That's the way the law's written.
No, come on now. Come on.
They are free to experiment.
You can leverage public money to fund these schools?
You don't have to even, you leverage it when a kid leaves a public high school and parent enrolls in a charter, the dollars follow the child. Now I do believe in the dollars following the child.
Oh, I do too.
That makes sense for everybody. The problem with it, and some states have had a better experience with charters, but in Ohio, the legislature passed legislation that gave carte blanche to the charters without much oversight. So there were a number, over 100 charter authorizers, some of which had no foot in the education world at all, who were supposed to be the sponsors, the overseers of these charter schools. Well, there are many smart entrepreneurs, of course, everywhere, and they thought, oh, you mean I could buy a building? By the way, public schools in Ohio, before they can sell an old school building that's not being used anymore, before they can sell it on auction and get a price that they could then invest in kids' textbooks or whatever, computers, iPads, whatever, they have to offer it to a charter school for $1. They have to put it up.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not making this stuff up.
Yes, you are.
No, you cannot make it up.
This is bizarre. Are you telling me that an unregulated industry has the legal authority to preempt the open market?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the open market.
It is privatization. It is intentionally so. And
buy a building for $1.
It has to be offered there first.
It has to be
before
offered
you can
there
recoup dollars
first.
For your own kids. You know, buildings do become obsolete. They get rebuilt. They get replaced, and that money is usually plowed back into the resources for the kids.
What it's supposed to
Correct.
do.
So there's two kinds of charters in Ohio and in most places.
Okay.
There are for-profit, privately owned charters. Completely privately owned.
So how
corporate
do the children,
owned,
meaning children pay a tuition?
Children in general are not paying tuition at the charter schools because you are paying that tuition. The taxpayer is paying that tuition. And so they will advertise, charters will advertise, you know, it's free, it's state-supported education. That's true. It's free to the parent, apparently. However, that money is coming out of the existing pot. The pot hasn't grown.
Right.
The pot of money that the state allocates has not grown particularly, not relatively.
Okay.
Okay. So you have these for-profit charters this way, and there have been a lot of scandals, particularly in Ohio, where money has been misused, misspent, not accounted for, et cetera. And that is because the legislation is so loose in terms of accounting.
Broad,
they're not made accountable. The other type is there are some nonprofit charters around the country and some in Ohio that are generally, those are the examples when people give a shining example. Look at this excellent charter school. Those are generally the nonprofit ones, where a group of people with a great idea came together. They formed a nonprofit. They really had an education mission at heart in doing this school. And some of those have done some good experimenting, and you can learn from them and see things from them.
And these are nonprofits.
The wrinkle in the whole thing is the nonprofits having gone really, it's a cowboy Wild West type of situation.
And this is happening right there. I must confess to you, this is all new information for me. I see these schools in the oddest places and locations, and I want to be open-minded about it because I know these are tax dollars.
But they look like fly-by-night schools.
They do.
And they have the loftiest names. Have you noticed?
I'm like, what? Michelle,
the world something.
The world. I'm like, who is this? And then the other thing I wanted to ask you: with these schools, do the teachers have to be certified?
No, not in charter. Not in the profit-making ones. No,
they don't have to be certified.
So you have no guarantee that teachers are actually trained. They generally will have some people with certificates. I would question why a person with a certificate is working in that arena, because they pay a lot less than the public schools do. The public schools pay for certified teachers and gives them stability. There's a pension on the other end. And that is so that schools can have stability and become really good organizations and can stay really good organizations, can build and grow and provide that stability and that quality.
So can I ask you a question? It's just a basic economic question. If the state allocates X number of dollars per student, period, how is it that a public school can have all of these requirements and benefits as well on those same dollars as opposed to a charter school where the wages are lower, the credentialing is whatever. Sketchy. And they don't have to buy, they've got a building for nothing. But how is this,
and by the way, they don't have to spend their money on athletics, clubs, any of the things that kind of, you know, give
Make
kids the
school
glue.
fun, yeah.
They glues the school together in
Yes.
terms of the kids' culture.
Yes.
Because they, under this law, are entitled to go and do all of those sports at the public school that they don't attend.
Wait a minute. What? The student at the charter school can go to a public school
And play.
and play.
Correct. That's correct.
They can have a team that they birth and use the facilities of the public school.
Well, as to having a team, I don't know that they
Or
have the right to
something like
start
that.
their own.
Okay.
But they have the right to, you know, compete to join that team on the same basis that the
They
students there
can
compete.
actually compete and join.
In other words, when there's tryouts,
Right, they can
show up.
come and try
Correct.
out.
That's correct. Now, that may be good for an individual particular kid.
Right.
You know, and as a parent, if that's your kid and that's your best option, you may like that. But that means that one more person is going to get cut from that roster at that school.
Yeah, because
So you have
the resources
there are fairness
are now,
issues here. There are
yeah,
real fairness
I would
issues.
have to say, when all of these laws were put into place, do you feel that the legislators had an understanding of what they were putting in place? And I bring this up because our current Secretary of Education, what is her name?
DeVos.
Miss
Betsy DeVos.
Betsy DeVos.
Now, Betsy's work was in Michigan.
Right
and
up
we
the
know what's
road.
going on in Detroit, and we know how badly the children and families of Detroit need quality education.
Yes.
They haven't had it for a very, very, very long time. And there was an interview not too long ago with Betsy DeVos in which she said that, well, the theory behind charters is that as charters experiment and find out new ways of doing things, by the way, there is no communication between public schools and charter schools that would ever spread any of that knowledge around if it does happen. So her theory was, as charters begin to learn unfettered by regulation, okay, learn new ways of working with kids, better ways of working with kids, and produce better results, the research says that the public school levels will rise as well in terms of achievement. And that sounded so good that she sold a lot of ideas about that.
So what they're saying basically is that by osmosis?
Well, it must be by osmosis because there is no process for it.
I'm trying to say.
There's no set up process for it. I mean, I think they're working those teachers hard enough in the charter schools like they are doing public schools. Nobody's got time to sit around and write articles for publication in a journal, and nobody's got time to read that either.
Right.
So I don't know there may be a few university studies going on, but that doesn't generally sift down to the teachers. But here's the crux of the matter with that interview she did on the Michigan schools. The interviewer brought it back and said, so you're saying that the public schools in Michigan, that the quality and the achievement has risen since you have done all this experimentation, and they got way far in Michigan with all of the deregulation they wanted. So that would be good, and we should be able to see that side by side, right? And she said, well, there are some instances where that's true. It's not true of Michigan as a whole.
As a whole.
The state, particularly the urban schools, but the state as a whole, proficiency has not risen.
Well, I was going to say, from what I have read, Michigan is a problem.
Everywhere is a problem because of the way that this is being done around the country. It's also true, if you look at the private sector, that Google, Amazon, what they call the FANG stocks in your investing world,
yes,
they are all investing in school experimentation and setting up schools and setting up school foundations to do their own experimenting with how can we get more kids into the pipeline for the kind of work that's going to have to be done that there is needed right now. There's not enough kids who know how to code now to go into those professions. And Michelle, this is, there was a movie called The Graduate years ago where the guy whispers into the groom's ear at a wedding. He says, "Tell me about it, Uncle." He goes, "Plastics." And that was the big thing to go into. Well, now the big thing to go into is coding, because
technology.
It's high end. It's in such short supply. All of these big players in the business world need that skill, and the American public school, nor charters, is producing it.
So, and that's interesting you bring that up because that's new information for me. Although it makes sense because what the manufacturing companies started medical schools to push their product through.
Right. So
And
that private influence is still very heavy.
That private influence is very heavy, and I'm not so sure if desired outcomes are not looked at because just as, like I said, you've got doctors who are skilled at drug evaluation because that's what they learned in medical school rather than some other fundamentals.
Right.
And the concern I have with Google and Amazon, which are FANG and they're not going anywhere, but the fact that they can possibly alter the learning process. And while I do understand their concern about technology because robots and all of that are here, they're not going anywhere. But again, the whole experience of learning.
Well, learning happens in many different ways.
Okay.
And you know my company is called Renegade Learning.
Right, I know.
So,
I know.
And I'm in the public space.
Okay.
And so the reason I call it that is because I think that real learning is so exciting. It happens all the time, everywhere you are.
Yes.
It goes on all day long, 24 hours a day is
Yes,
learning for
the brain is
somebody
absorbing.
somewhere.
Yep.
Exactly. And I made up a theory years ago and wrote about it that I called the de facto learning theory. And you remember the way that the Latin terms de jure and de facto were used in the Brown versus Board of Education desegregation
Yes.
case. De jure meaning what was the rule. So de jure was that segregation was not supposed to be taking place. De facto is the fact of what is taking place.
Right.
And so this also applies to learning. A child comes into a classroom, the teacher has the lesson plan. Somewhere something goes awry and the lesson plan gets ditched for the day because a fight breaks out or who knows what happens in that classroom. Of course, that doesn't happen every day for every teacher.
Right.
But the point is that the child is learning in every classroom every day. Oh, they're learning. What are they learning?
But that's the thing. What
Are they learning what was in the lesson plan? Because they may be learning that. They may also be learning some other things. They are learning to judge the character of that teacher, for one. And they're learning, what is this person about? Because teachers have 120 kids, but kids only have 5, 6 teachers. And so they have all year to study on that teacher's personality and character. And this is their biggest character lesson. Along with studying their parents, of course, they do that too. And their early thoughts about all that, whether this person tells the truth or is fair. Kids are really into fairness. You know,
are they?
God love it. They are. Teenagers are the most fair-minded people. It is the single biggest thing on their mind all the time. Now,
Am I being treated fairly?
Not just am I, but that wasn't fair. That's not fair.
Oh.
And God love them. They should never lose it. Why do we all lose that as a society? I'm into democracy.
Because we get beat down.
Yes, we do. But on this school matter,
okay.
If these schools want to teach democracy, if they want to be in a democracy and prepare kids for life in democracy and even high-tech life in democracy, then we also have to have some democratic structures that are going to be real about what schools are for. They are not for selling to the textbook companies that came out of Texas years ago and have stayed there, which have all morphed into technology companies now. Also, McGraw-Hill, all of the people who produce all of the testing. Who do you think established that original test craze in Washington, D.C. that led to the whole nation, kids spending weeks a year strictly on testing? And it's discouraging for kids. Not every kid is good at testing.
Well, correct.
You can take that little Friday quiz on, your math every week. Kids can handle that, and they do need to be tested periodically. But they don't need 3 to 4 weeks of instructional time wasted on testing. Where did that craze come from?
And is that a public
It didn't
school,
come out of teachers.
or is that charter?
Well, all of that started with public schools.
Okay.
Because who makes the rules for public schools?
The legislature.
The legislature
Exactly.
in Washington originally, and then at the state level. And so who pressures the legislature in Washington and the legislature in Columbus?
Yeah,
the companies who sell tests, sell goods, sell technology, sell building of buildings, sell desks and furniture. People are in business. The schools are a steady market. It's like Procter & Gamble, who figured out a long time ago that people are always going to need toilet paper.
And soap.
And soap.
Yes.
People are always going to have babies and have to send them to school at some point.
Yes.
And so this is a huge, stable market, and everybody wants a piece of that market. And that market does need to be supplied.
Right.
But the suppliers, in my mind, should not be the policymakers. The policymakers need to be parents, grandparents, people who
People that have
people
a
are on
vested
local
interest.
school boards
Yeah.
and who get involved with
Right.
their local PTOs. And that brings me to another thing that's going to be an awful surprise for a lot of people. And this is very true, so you can look it up. It's House Bill 512.
House
and
Bill 512.
Not Voinovich. What am I talking about?
The governor of Ohio.
That's right.
Kasich.
Kasich
Yeah.
just commented on this, that he is in favor of this.
Okay.
So this is on the record, House Bill 512, with Kasich supporting it. They are planning to abolish the Board of Education for the state of Ohio.
Stop.
I can't make it up. It's true.
Stop.
And I know this
What?
partly because a bunch of us in Cincinnati area supported Pat Bruns for state school board, and we got her elected a couple of years back.
Okay.
It's time to get her reelected, and the majority of the board is Republican and extremely conservative. Most of them don't live in the cities. There's very little city urban presence
Okay.
on the state school board, and I think that Kasich and the legislature want a much more direct control over the schools.
And not
they
going
feel
through
like
a board.
They feel like the board is still, it's Republican majority. I mean, I don't know what they're concerned about, but they don't think there ought to be enough democracy for people in the locales around the state to say, okay, well, we want to have somebody coming back and telling us what's going on that we elected.
Right. That's very disappointing. And I don't have any kind of an answer because, like I said, I'm walking on completely fresh information.
And the
You're the expert.
And the legislators come up with the wildest and craziest and bad ideas for schools. Well, let's do this. Somebody will get it up their craw, and if they're a leader in the legislature, they can get something passed.
My goodness.
Like, okay, let's arm teachers.
well,
Maybe that'll solve the
we'll arming
switch to-
teachers.
Right. That is a perfect example of some stupid idea that
I mean,
somebody in the
when does
legislature
a
comes
teacher
up with.
need to be packing a 45?
Okay, here's and
Ooh-wee.
anybody who thinks that's a great idea, I'd say
I'm
this
like
tongue in
with
cheek.
children running around.
But I say for real, not just tongue in cheek.
Okay.
Just go back to your childhood and your school experience and think, oh, it's the craziest teacher I ever had.
You're talking about nuns
the-
or teachers?
Either.
Either.
Who is the craziest principal I ever had? Assistant principal. You know,
Do I want them
I
to
love
have-
educators. I was one myself. But, you know, those of us who are in schools, we know our colleagues. No, we're not always having a good day, all of us.
Yes.
We're not all of us at our mental healthy peak every single day.
I was gonna
we got
say,
our problems like everybody else.
Yeah, and then you've got young people.
Yes.
And children
And each other.
and each other. I mean, that's just
It is the craziest, stupidest idea I've ever heard of. And where did it come from? Not from teachers, not from parents, and not from kids. That voice is not where it needs to be. And partly because this is a women's arena, historically.
yes,
Schooling and the
yes,
raising of children.
Yes.
And yet, we have that secondary voice. We don't have a primary voice because we are not 51% of any state legislature. And we
You're
wouldn't even
correct.
have to. We are powerful enough as women
Yeah.
that we don't even need a 51%. Give us a good, strong 30, 40%, and you would be amazed how things would change. Because there are plenty of reasonable men out there, but they're not being led by reasonable men right now.
Well, the thing that has so gotten under my craw is if you have to deal with teachers, and they were talking about on one show I was listening to, where not every teacher would be trained on gun usage, just incognito teachers. I'm like, wait a minute, I need to know who's
No, I do
packing a
too.
gun.
I do too.
I need to know because they may wake up on the wrong side of the bed. But the other thing is that I feel that if I had a child in that kind of an environment, the whole notion of homeschooling takes a
Starts to be more attractive.
Right. Which is, I don't need to be a part of any of this. I'm out. And I do know that homeschooling is a big force in America today. A lot of now, don't ask me how they have the time. I don't know. I couldn't have homeschooled. But it appears that this may be an element to accelerate those kinds of decisions by parents.
I think parents have that option.
Yeah.
And of course, there's always been an option for homeschool. It's not difficult to set that up.
Okay.
And I'd have to go back and look at whether there are any updates on the requirements. So I don't want to state the requirements here. But if you Google homeschool requirements, you will get to the page and it will tell you what the regulations are. Basically, it involves going to the school district and signing off on something that basically says that I am going to homeschool my child this year. And you have to meet a certain educational level.
And the parent or the student?
The parent.
Okay, the parent has to have.
So every parent cannot homeschool legally.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And the reason for that is that, again, take the least educated parent you might know. Would their child have a better chance with their parent, perhaps with their own limitations of what they had opportunity to go to or know about? Maybe the child needs something broader.
Okay.
So that's the reason for that rule.
Okay.
You can agree or disagree with it, but that's the reason for it. I know there was a time when a parent had to have a bachelor's degree. I'm not sure if that's still the case.
Okay.
But there is some threshold. It may even be a couple of years of community college or something. Not sure what that threshold is right now. But people that are interested can certainly check that out. The issue that arises from time to time with homeschool parents is that every population has its people with problems. Every population. So if you take all the homeschool parents in a group, there's going to be a few that have problems in that population, and where the homeschooling becomes a cover for maybe a very paranoid set of parents that thinks that they can physically keep control of their children as they grow up in a way that really can't be done.
Actually, I have encountered that more than I'd like to admit.
And there's some abuse going on in the name of
are controlling.
It's being covered up by homeschooling.
The mental.
But that is not the bulk of homeschooling, in my opinion.
Okay.
But there are cases like that.
Okay. I guess you can find that anywhere, but certainly in a public school setting, there's just a larger population.
Right.
And there would be a lessening of that opportunity. If you had a wacko teacher, they would not be wacko
very long.
Very long. Right. Because everybody would be like,
right.
Got it.
Although remember, every population also has mental health issues.
That's
and there will be, within 100 people, there will be a couple of them in there that are really, they may not even be outwardly displaying any of those symptoms, but they could be suicidal themselves. They could be distraught over things that nobody knows anything about.
How can you mask that? I mean, you're in a population group where your behavior is observable.
Right.
How do you mask those problems?
Well, you have to be functional enough to operate in that environment.
Okay,
and
I got it.
That is what keeps it healthy enough not to go overboard.
Okay, because I do know that when we were growing up, there were odd kids.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
And odd kids can grow up to be odd people.
And we actually had a couple of odd professors.
Sure.
That were, I remember I went to Walnut Hills High School, and they specialized in very high achieving teachers at that time. And there were a couple of teachers that were definitely
odd.
Yes. And very different.
Well, you'll find a spectrum.
Okay.
Of everything everywhere.
Okay.
Because
every
the
world,
human quality, is the world.
That's the
statistics, that's math, that some of us are here on some line of whatever and
some are there.
Right.
Yeah, I got it, my goodness. So the issue of gun control in the schools, it's picking up momentum. I'm serious.
It is. I give all credit to the young people. I'm going to be marching right behind them next week. There's a parade in every town next week, marching behind school kids. I think it may be this week on Wednesday.
Okay.
We'll have to
I'd
check
like
that.
to do that because I think that's courage.
This is what we raise them to do: is lead.
Yes.
If we are so incompetent as adults that we cannot sort this out, which we apparently are, then let them step up and lead. I'll be right behind them.
So what do they want?
I think they want safe schools. And,
I think they have a right
here's,
to that.
As for the relationship between safe schools and guns,
Uh-huh.
in my opinion, there is no relationship. And, you know, years ago, the cry was for every school to get, you know, metal detectors.
Okay.
And I did an article way back in the day, and I still feel like when I wrote that article, metal detectors, guns, none of these things that are physical, you know, things that people can use, create a safe school. What creates a safe school is the same thing that creates a safe family. People together who have respect for each other, love to some degree for each other, or enough respect not to unlove anyone with bad behavior. In other words, not to hurt someone, not to cause someone pain. And in a good family, that's what happens. And people build strong bonds with each other. And nobody in that family is going to let anything bad happen to the other people in that family.
That is absolutely
because of
right.
that bond. And schools, although they may be bigger and larger, and the love is not as tight as it is in a family, the school, people feel strongly about it if it's a good culture in that school.
Okay.
Now, there are many schools without the culture that is needed in the school. Poorly performing schools often have culture problems.
Can you expound on that for our viewers?
Yes.
What does that look like?
If you have, let's talk about the places I have worked and loved working in, and those are the high poverty high schools.
Really?
You have high poverty high schools all over the place. You have many in cities. You have you have them in rural areas.
I
People
believe
don't talk
it.
about much.
I believe it.
And you also have, you don't have high poverty high schools in the suburbs generally. But in the cities, when you have these, you know, 98% high poverty high schools, and their achievement is generally very poor compared to Walnut Hills, Indian Hill. Indian Hill has financial advantage. Walnut is just a super institution that bonds people closely. And some of the magnet schools are able to get that.
Okay.
But if a neighborhood school with a high poverty rate is able to make a bonded culture where kids care about each other,
Okay.
the teachers obviously care about the kids. The kids know that the teachers are not going to let anything happen to them. And the kids know that, okay, I don't want to be a snitch, but I am going to go talk to the principal about such and such because that don't sound safe, what this kid is planning. And that kid may not like being told on, but they are now in a safer situation because that other child was not going to let something happen to this child.
Right.
And so you're going to hear a lot more about this term. The short name of it is SEL. It stands for Social Emotional Learning.
Okay.
And for the first time, this is the only thing the government seems to have gotten right in the last 20 years, in my opinion. Really, this has come from pressure from teachers and principals and parents. Social Emotional Learning is the process of teaching kids character, communication skills, bonding skills, helping one another out sort of skills, learning to get along with yourself, tame your own demons if you have them, all the how to handle the troubles that you've had if you're in a high poverty, high pressure situation, and you have kids who are not living in poverty who are abused and have every other little thing happen to them that ain't so little if you're in it.
Okay.
Ain't.
Right. That's
Why am I
okay,
using that on television?
Because you're from South Carolina.
'Cause I am
not
from South
Kentucky, and it's okay.
Because we used to talk like that.
Because we used to talk like that.
And we know
okay.
better now.
Okay.
So the point is that ESSA, which replaced No Child Left Behind, is the new law, ESSA. And it applies to all the states, and states have some leeway with it. But ESSA has one difference from No Child Left Behind. In No Child Left Behind, you could not spend money teaching kids how to be on a team, how to do teamwork, how to communicate, what are called the soft skills.
Okay.
Now the employers are suddenly complaining that we don't have any kids with any soft skills. They can come in with this skill or that skill, but they don't know how to work on a team with other people and be productive. And so it's now blessed that we can use money that we have in the budget to do team activities and other activities with kids that teach them how to get along with each other,
Okay.
how to find their own voice,
Okay.
young people need a voice.
Oh, I agree.
They will find it one way or another.
We want it positive.
Give them a
though.
real voice.
Right, a real voice.
At an early age, and champion them. You don't
Yeah.
have to agree with everything
No, you
they
don't.
come up with.
No, you don't.
But you champion the voice itself.
But you don't crucify.
Correct.
That I
And you know,
can't
kids
stand.
who have a voice, want a voice, use their voice, they're out going to march this week for school safety. They're going to find their way to the ballot box too.
Oh, and I'm excited about
I
that.
am too.
I am so excited about this Joshua generation, the ones that are going to go in.
Is this what it's called now?
It's the Joshua generation. It's the when Moses wanted to go into the promised land, and everybody was like, no, and it was Joshua, the teenager, that said, we can do this.
This is true. This
we
is a
can
great
do
name
this.
for that generation.
We can do this. And I was like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
I'm there with you.
I heard
think
just
that's
the other
awesome.
day that I asked my son, who doesn't want to be called a millennial.
Okay.
So I think he's the last of the Gen Ys.
Okay.
That they're naming this, they are calling the current 2030s the millennials. I said, what are they calling the ones behind you guys? And he's like, Mom, I'm not in that group, but it's being called Generation Z.
Z.
No, I like the Joshua generation.
I like
much
the
better.
Joshua generation, those that say we can do this.
Right, right.
I think that's awesome. So where are we going ahead? Because time our time is kind of winding down. Where do you see you, Dr. Virginia Rhodes, affectionately known as Ginger? That's what I know you as.
Right.
Where do you see you going?
Well,
I know you have Renegade Learning.
I've retired from Cincinnati Public.
Yes.
Although I still
So
have
now-
all affection for it. I still
Okay.
stay in touch.
Okay.
I want to try out some things, and since the charter folks all think we should be experimenting, I have an experiment that I'm
Okay.
working on that I have taken to state officials, and we'll see if anybody bites on it. But I think instead of the district losing millions of dollars a year to profit-making charters,
That are failing.
now I could stand it if it was a nonprofit, maybe.
Okay, maybe.
But the profit-making ones really bother me.
Okay.
Because they're profiting off of kids.
Right.
And those programs are lacking because, no, you can't interfere with the profits.
Mm-hmm.
So why can't the school district write an RFP? Most of your viewers know probably what an RFP is, request for proposal.
Okay.
And, many businesses and many establishments, including, governments and school
Right,
boards,
right.
use the RFP to say, hey, we're going to build a new building. We got an RFP. If your company can help construct that building, if you can help do the plumbing,
Right.
write that RFP proposal up and bring it to us, and we may employ it. So this RFP would be for a new genre that's coming about called student-centered, teacher-led, family-friendly schools. But to be
Wow.
placed within the umbrella of the public system, not outside of it taking profits.
Okay.
Okay, but within it,
Okay.
preserving that money for the actual education of kids. So the school board, this is my fantasy, the school board anywhere in Ohio says, we can see now that we're going to have to build a new school in 2 years. So we're starting that planning now because our demographics tell us that this area of town is growing and we're going to have to build a school somewhere. So we're going to invite our most talented staff, all the great teachers that we have, hardworking people in the district, to come together, find your like-minded colleagues who would like to start a school that's really exciting for kids and families, is run by the teachers, not the state of Ohio. In other words, it has the autonomies that the charters have, but it is under the umbrella and supervision of the district. So it is
I like
accountable.
that.
It's
I
accountable.
like the accountability
And so
thing, yeah.
we're going to throw this RFP out.
Okay.
Maybe a dozen different work groups begin to meet on,
Right.
after school or on a Saturday and work this proposal up, because I can tell you that almost every teacher I've ever known has a fantasy in the back of their mind of what their school, if they could really design the school that they believe would just give everything to kids that it needs.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy school, like a fantasy football team that people have,
Yeah.
So put the RFP out, work groups assemble. Let's say at the end of 6-8 months of that planning, the district calls a big confab. These 12 groups are going to present to the public, not just to the board, in an open public exposition,
Okay. Full of transparency.
kind of like startups do.
Yeah. Yeah, argue their
making
case.
business translations
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
We've got a great idea, or Shark Tank for your
Yeah,
viewers
yeah,
that might
yeah.
watch Shark Tank. It's going to be Shark Tank EDU.
But I think that's
and so
powerful.
if that group has written a mighty proposal for a powerful school that can do everything kids need, and they bring that and they win that competition,
Okay.
what they win is a contract with the board to complete that design and open that school, contracting with the board to do it, but remaining under the supervision and the accountability of the system.
So they have the authority to execute.
Yes, as the charters have been given.
As the charter.
Without accountability.
Without accountability. So
Right.
now we have internally
Yes.
that.
You use your talent. You grow
Yes.
that talent. We have, you know, every system has its best teachers, and hopefully they're spread around.
Yes.
But some of them are capable of running schools by themselves.
I believe
There is
that.
a whole teacher-led movement out there that's talking about this. There are over 200 schools like this in the United States, and they've popped up spontaneously. Hughes is considered to be, in Cincinnati, the largest of that group.
And to
Because
think that you were the principal there. to
turning
see
Hughes
that.
into a big STEM school
Yes.
was, I wasn't even there at the time, but a group of really powerful, awesome teachers I had worked with, very pro-kid, very pro-family, got together and said, let's redesign Hughes and make something really special out of it. And they went to the superintendent, to the district. The district couldn't fund it. They went to the National Science Foundation. This is, of course, the agency, the government agency that sponsors NASA,
Right.
sends rockets up into space.
Right.
Okay, they looked at that proposal, snatched it out of the pile, called up Kathy Wright, who's the current
Yeah.
principal of Hughes,
Yeah.
who was a teacher at the time. I was off at West High on another project, and gave her $3.5 million to institute that program. Now, it's on regular budget money now.
Right, but the startup.
But the startup was
Monies.
funded out of a group of innovative teachers with a great idea who went to parents to get support for it, went to the community, and turned that school into one where there's things being done that aren't being done anywhere else around.
I must tell you, because I came out of, given my age, Hughes had a very different reputation 50 years ago. I mean, it just did. It was just, it was an inner city school.
But remember what was happening.
Yeah.
And of course,
It was right next to UC and
right,
everything
but it was
else.
also in the middle of civil rights.
I got it.
And things were happening,
got
and
it.
kids were on the move,
And kids were on,
and Clifton was upset because
Yes.
Hughes High School was no longer white.
I,
Let's say it.
let's call it the way it is.
Aiken High School was built originally
Yep.
to satisfy the professorial and business crowd in Clifton so that they would
Be
not
able-
have to go to Hughes and
That
be,
is
and be
something
integrated.
else.
It was an anti-integration move to build Aiken. I was also principal at Aiken, and I love that school.
I remember
So
Aiken
let
High
no
School.
one who sees this think that I'm not the #1 champion of Aiken as well.
That's one. You know what? We've run out of time.
I'm sorry for that.
No, I'm sorry that this show is not longer. But if someone wants to seek your services as a consultant, how would they reach you?
Just Google Renegade Learning.
Renegade Learning. Did you
Right.
viewers get that? Google Renegade Learning. You'll see Dr. Virginia Rhodes, who is the CEO of that remarkable company. And I want to thank everybody for the distinct honor of being able to share with you her and her vision and her values. And now you understand why I love and respect this woman so very, very much. In closing out on today's segment of The Power of Money, again, I'm your host, Michelle Graves, and I thank you so much for being a part of our world. God bless you, and you take care. Bye-bye.